This is just a method I cannot get behind. If you're not sure if something is right when it comes to how you're parenting or treating your child, test it out on yourself first. Hey, it's Amber. Welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time here, welcome. I make videos about kind of crunchy motherhood and lifestyle. If you like that sort of content, I would love it if you hit that little subscribe button down below. Today, I'm sitting down with you and I am sharing 10 common parenting practices and just things in general that I do not do as a mom to a toddler. And I feel like I need to say before I get into this to please remember that this is just a video. I am not judging you or anyone else who does things differently than I do. I think that there are a ton of different right ways to parent our kids. These are just my thoughts based on my experience so far as a mom, and I'm hoping that you can just get ideas or inspiration for your own parenting journey from this if you're looking for any. The first thing that I do not do is to use screens to keep my son busy. This actually has been a very easy one for me because I'm not much of a TV person myself. I'm not one to really just have the TV on in the background, and so it doesn't occur to me to flip on the TV when I'm trying to get something done and my son's like pulling and whining at my jeans. On top of that, it's just something that I never wanted to do from the get-go because I feel like once you start to create that habit of using TV as a distraction, the more that you have to keep on using that level of stimulation as a distraction for your kid. And if that's something that you do, that's totally fine. I think that if I was like a single mom or something like that, then maybe I would have a different opinion about this, but as it is, it's not something that I want to do. And we're not against TV or anything like that. I just want to prolong regular TV exposure for as long as I can. The next thing that I do not do is bribing. So I do not try to bribe my son with like treats or rewards to get him to cooperate with me. Sometimes what I will do is pull out one of his toys and demonstrate how he can play with that toy, maybe in a different way than he's used to. Or if I do have a moment to stop what I'm doing, I will stop and play with him for a few minutes. And sometimes like that little bit of attention is enough to, I guess, spark his imagination and to get him to like take over and play by himself for a little bit. But if he's not receptive to me trying to like redirect his attention to something else or to just watching what I'm doing, I do just let him work through the boredom, and sometimes that does mean letting him cry and whine for a little bit. I just don't feel like it's helpful to him in the long run if every single time he's feeling uncomfortable because he's bored or he wants my attention, I immediately am trying to negotiate what I can give him in exchange for a few more minutes of time. The third thing that I do not do, or at minimum, I try really hard not to, but I will toot my own horn in this area. I feel like I'm pretty good at this, and that is yell. I was so much more of a hothead in my early 20s than I am now in my early 30s, and I think in part that just comes with age. Like I think I just kind of mellowed out a little bit over time, but it also didn't just magically happen that way. I did a lot of inner work in my mid-20s to learn like how to recognize when I'm starting to feel myself like getting really pissed off, and to replace habits that are usually a response to anger or frustration, like yelling, name calling, things like that, with healthier habits. Things like listening without interrupting and using a calm tone when you're speaking, even if you're angry. And I'm so happy that I learned all of these things and put them into practice in my life before I became a parent, because I don't think yelling is very effective. The way that I see it is that if your toddler is overwhelmed with feelings of sadness or anger and they're up here and you start yelling at them, telling them to stop or be quiet, then you're up here with them, and now what? Who's regulating who? But if you're able to stay calm and grounded, even if you're frustrated, you have a much better chance, in my opinion, of getting them to slowly regulate and come back down here with you. And obviously, I'm not perfect. I have my moments of weakness, but I've just noticed that the skill of not yelling and raising your voice at your kids and staying calm is like a muscle, in that the more that you use it, the easier that it gets. Also, I want to reserve yelling for those moments where I need his immediate attention, like he's about to do something dangerous or something like that. Next is to tell him to stop crying. I read a quote in the book, How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen, that explains why I don't do this perfectly. The author says, if you're not sure if something is right when it comes to how you're parenting or treating your child, test it out on yourself first. And without even giving it much thought, I can tell you without a doubt, if I was crying in front of a close friend or in front of Alex and their response was to tell me to stop crying or to be like, shh, I would be livid. I think sometimes it can be difficult because toddlers and little kids just get upset over the smallest things. But when you think about the fact that their entire scope of the world lies within the walls of your home and maybe a daycare or something like that, it makes so much more sense that they're going to get upset over these minuscule things because they have no concept for what real problems are, and how could they? So instead of telling him to stop crying or shushing him, I try to help him work through his emotions, or even just holding space for him while he airs them out. And that, not all the time, but usually results in him calming down and in turn stop crying a lot faster. Number 5 is to ignore tantrums. This is just a method I cannot get behind. I understand the thought process behind it, that if you ignore the behavior, eventually they'll understand that it doesn't get them any attention whatsoever and they'll stop doing it. But I don't think that toddlers especially are throwing tantrums because they want your attention. I think that they're throwing tantrums because they are flooded with a really uncomfortable emotion that they don't know what to do with. And there's so much research out there at this point that shows that their brains literally are not developed enough to cope with these emotions by themselves. I'm not saying that there are no kids out there who throw tantrums to get what they want, but in my unprofessional opinion, that is a behavior that would come later, and it would be the response to getting what they want from throwing a tantrum over and over and over. I don't fall on my knees every single time he throws a tantrum and just hand him what he wants on a silver platter. All I'm saying is that I don't turn my back to him and completely ignore him just because he's having a tough time. Next is spanking. I really do not believe in hitting a child because they misbehaved. And I don't call it spanking, I call it hitting because that's what it is. There is so much research that shows that kids who are hit are more likely to become adults who hit. And I just don't understand what hitting them is supposed to teach them at all. Very similar to the whole yelling thing, if they're already up here and you meet them there and then you hit them and they still don't listen, you've kind of backed yourself in a corner, because where are you supposed to go from there? Like, hit them harder? I will leave that one there. Number 7 is to make him finish his food. Kai is definitely a standard toddler when it comes to food. Sometimes he will clean his plate, and then other times he'll take 3 bites and be completely done with his food. If there's something on his plate that he hasn't tried, I'll always encourage him to try it, or sometimes I'll just give him a few minutes to just sit in his seat with his plate in front of him, even if he's not touching anything, in case he's gotten distracted and he just needs a minute for his attention to find its way back onto his plate. But otherwise, I don't force him to eat something if he's like really not interested in it. I also just want him to learn to listen to his stomach. So if he's full or he's just not that hungry, then I'm not going to force him to fill up his stomach. And I want him to learn that if he is hungry and he doesn't eat, then he is going to leave the table hungry. Kai woke up from his nap, so he's gonna be here for the rest of this. 8 is hiding veggies in food. I wanna teach Kai to enjoy vegetables, so I feel like it would be counterproductive to hide them in food. We eat a lot of vegetables in our home, so he's served a variety of vegetables made in a variety of ways very consistently. And my theory is, as long as he's being exposed to them consistently, he will probably learn to enjoy most of them, or at minimum to be okay with them. Next is withholding sweets. When Kai first started solids, my plan was to withhold processed sweets, even if it was like homemade, like a homemade cake or something, for as long as possible. And then there was this one time a little bit before he turned 1, so I did do it for quite a while. Alex and I took a day trip and we got some ice cream, and Kai wasn't upset that we weren't giving him the ice cream, but he was absolutely aware of the fact that we were eating something and he wasn't, and I felt really bad. So I gave him a little bit of ice cream, and of course he loved it. After that, I stopped trying to avoid it on his behalf so badly. We don't eat a ton of processed food in general in our home, and so I kind of just decided right then and there that if we're having a little sweet treat, then he could have some too, as long as it was like something safe for him to have and that there's no reason to avoid it like the plague. I think I initially was worried that once he got a taste of like ice cream or cake or something like that, that would be all he wants, but that definitely has not been the case. The last thing that I don't do is to not follow through with what I say I'm going to do. I don't know about you, but when I think about this concept as it relates to parenting, I think about parents saying, like, when you say there's gonna be a consequence, you have to follow through with it so that your kids know that when you lay down the law, you're serious. In my opinion, this whole thing is more about establishing trust with my child. I want my son to know that if I say I'm going to do something or not do something, I mean it. And so this goes both ways. If he's throwing sand at the park and I tell him, okay, we're gonna go ahead and leave the park for today because it's not safe to throw sand, I'm serious. I'm not gonna be like, okay, remember I said, okay, if you do it again, I said we're gonna leave. It goes over there. I'll plug it back in when we're done, okay?
No.
Yeah, when we're done, I'll plug it. You can hold on to it though. You wanna hold it? But on the opposite end of the spectrum, if I'm trying to fold a pile of laundry and my son wants me to read him a book and I tell him, I'll read it to you once I finish folding all of this, I'm not going to hope that once I'm done, he's moved on and forgotten about it. I'm going to say, okay, I'm done. Let's go ahead and read that book. Even if he has moved on and forgotten, I'll ask him, like, do you still want to read that book? Obviously, Kai is only 2 and he's constantly changing and growing. And as he changes, I'm growing and learning too. So some of this could be subject to change in the future. I don't know, but this is where we're at right now. And I think that's great for everyone, because if something is working now, but in 2 years it's not working anymore, there's no reason to force yourself and everyone around you to stick to something that you've all outgrown. I would love to hear about any common or even not so common parenting practices that you do not do. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.